Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. And I'm the managing director of a data science consulting company. I try to come up with a question that I hope resonates and that I hope you are asking yourself, because you are figuring out, should my healthcare organization be using an AI scribe, and if so, which one? So that was the question we tried to address. And we were under a lot of time pressure, so we came up with the smallest possible experiment we could conduct. First, some background. So the world of speech-to-text transcription is quite large and broad, and unsurprisingly, most of the tools out there is focused on the English language, and not all of them are most of them are not dedicated to medical conversations. So if you say, actually, I want a medical scribe, that narrows down things by a lot. And then in the South African context, we have so many languages. Also, just by the way, I'm not a South African. I grew up in Belgium, so my accent is already a challenge for some of the scribes. But so we thought, let's focus on English and Afrikaans to give the AI scribe some chance of success, because if we were to look at all the other languages, then it would be even harder. So this is sort of a best case benign scenario. So as I alluded to, most of the tools that are available at the moment have been trained in the global north and have been fed training material that is textbook, so it's well pronounced and it's proper English and proper Afrikaans. But in the reality, patients and even doctors don't necessarily speak textbook English and Afrikaans. And to give a little anecdote, I looked up a linguistic study conducted by a master's student at UCT, and she interviewed 11 women over 4 group interviews. A few hours in total of material, and in those few hours of material, there were 356 instances where English and Afrikaans were switched. So, and a lot of this is intersentential or intrasentential code switching, which means within one sentence you move from English to Afrikaans and back to English, or from Afrikaans to English and back to Afrikaans. And why do people do that? It's part of their identity, it's how they grew up, it's how they speak. And sometimes it's also, you know a word better in the one language than the other, so you want to communicate it the way you hear it, you feel it. And sometimes it also indicates a change in tone or in topic. Maybe English is your serious language and Afrikaans is your more informal language, or the other way around. So if we were to record real conversations between doctors and patients, we would have to deal with the challenge of personalized information, medical information that we don't necessarily want to share with the world and with the large corporations out there. So we decided, let's simulate consultations. So we created sort of semi-structured scripts of typical consultations in collaboration with medical doctors to make sure this is a typical, stereotypical way of an interaction between a patient and a doctor. We recruited doctors and we recruited model patients. And we looked for patients who are known to frequently switch. So this is a very cherry-picked experiment because we didn't have, first of all, we didn't have time, and we wanted to really stress test the tools to see, can they handle this language switching or not. Of course, in the real world, you would require ethical clearance to do a proper experiment. We didn't have time for that, but that's definitely something we would like to do in the future. Despite our best efforts, only 2 doctors responded to our call to come forward and be volunteers. And so we have the grand total of 6 consultations that I'm presenting now. So it's really a tiny experiment, but nevertheless, I think it still qualitatively shows some interesting results. Those 6 consultations generated a total of 3,746 words. So each word a scribe can either understand correctly, not understand and leave out, or replace with something else. So in essence, we do have a data set with 3,746 data points. So this is what we did. We looked for doctors and we looked for simulation patients. We created those consultations. We recorded them. I'll go into the details how we did that. And then we, of course, importantly, we had to find which tools claim to understand both English and Afrikaans. The list is not very long. We then fed the audio to those different tools and asked, okay, transcribe it. And then after that transcription was produced, we quantified the quality and accuracy by calculating the word error rate, which is essentially what percentage of all the words that were spoken did you get wrong. And then you can sort of categorize it, as I said. There can be deletions, there can be insertions, and there can be substitutions, which is, I heard it wrong. I heard something, but I got it wrong. We tested whether what we found is in line with what those tools published previously to see are they honest, and are we getting it, is it better, worse, or equivalent to what they have previously claimed? And then lastly and importantly, we wanted to know if you now have this perfect or imperfect transcript, to what extent does that affect the ability of another AI to summarize into a useful patient summary that you would in practice use as a doctor? Okay, so I've already mentioned the top line there. So 2 doctors, 2 patients. Each doctor conducted 3 simulated consultations with a patient, and we picked things that are common, so lower back pain, diabetes, and insomnia. We used standard equipment, so the built-in microphone of a MacBook laptop, because we felt that's realistically what a doctor might have at their disposal. We didn't want to hook up fancy microphones because in practice it's not that likely that you would set it up like that in your own practice. Okay, as you can see, we identified 6 AI tools that claim to both understand English and Afrikaans, and then that can do the transcription from voice to text. And of those 6, we only evaluated 4. So OpenAI Whisper, Google Gemini, 11 Labs Scribe, and Heidi Health. Of those 4, only the last one, Heidi Health, is dedicated as a medical scribe. The other ones are general purpose tools. MetaLlama 3 is an open weight model, so you can download it and run it on a local infrastructure. That has an advantage, but it's of course also much more challenging, so we didn't do that. And Nora AI is a tool integrated into the HealthBridge electronic health record system. We didn't have access to that, so we couldn't evaluate Nora AI, but that's definitely something we would love to do in the future. One thing that maybe wasn't that clear for us from the outset is that if we want to do this evaluation, we have to clean it up a little bit after we get the raw transcript. So some of the AI insert these tags, who is speaking, and that's useful, but it of course affects the error rate, so that had to be removed. Time markers had to be removed, and if there was laughter, then the AI might say, oh, the patient and the doctor were laughing. That's not strictly part of the transcript as for our purposes, so we had to remove that too. Filler words were removed. Everything was reduced to lowercase for consistency. And then all punctuation was removed except for the apostrophes like I've or I'd. Okay, and then the word error rate is the sum of all the things that went wrong, either misunderstood, not there, or you heard something that wasn't there, divided by the total words in reference. Okay, so here are the results. The best performing tool was the Scribe from 11 Labs, and 11 Labs is a company that's specialized in speech-to-text transcription, so in some ways it's not surprising that they performed the best. At the lowest error rate, 8% more or less. The worst one was about 37% OpenAI Whisper, and so some fair variation. What's also interesting is that how that error rate is composed is also different. Not so much in terms of the substitution, that's roughly the same across the 4 systems, but the deletion rate varies highly. So the blue part, OpenAI Whisper, they were a quarter of the words that were spoken were not represented in the transcript, so they were just left out. They were not understood, and instead of making something up or guessing, OpenAI Whisper decided, I don't know, so I'm just not gonna say it or show it. If we stopped there, I'm not sure what the conclusion would be. Can you use them? Can't you use them? Is 8% good enough? Is 37% too bad to use? Probably not good enough, is what I would have guessed. But in practice, as a doctor in South Africa or anywhere in the world, that transcript is not something you're going to be interacting with a whole lot. You don't have time for this. So just like you don't write full sentences in front of your patient, you write summarized notes. If those notes are still accurate despite having misunderstood a lot, then it's still a useful system. So we had to do that extra step, and we asked, okay, so does this suboptimal word error rate affect the ability to create useful, accurate summaries of these consultations? And the answer is, interestingly, and I think encouragingly, that actually even the worst performing systems are still able to produce relatively good notes, especially when you compare it to the notes that the doctors made. So we asked the doctors in the consultations, do as you normally do. If you make a lot of notes, then make a lot of notes. If you don't make any notes, don't make any notes. Do as you do. And so they gave us their notes, which were minimalist, bullet points. They were not necessarily wrong, but they did not capture the richness and the completeness of everything that was said. And so compared to the sparsity of the doctor's notes, the AI notes were much more complete, gave more context. And also they were also more structured. So without asking for it, it produced SOAP notes. Probably because that's how it's been trained, whereas doctors don't necessarily create SOAP notes. So in conclusion, one, there's a lot of variation. It does matter to look around and test a few systems to see which one produces the best transcript. Our study was totally not powered to do a detailed analysis to see those mistakes, how and where and why did they translate into inaccuracies in the summaries. We would have to do 5 or 10 times more consultations. We would need to vary the disciplines, the type of doctors and type of patients to begin to get an idea of that relationship. So I speak, you can say preliminary results, but I think very encouraging and definitely something to build on. The transcription in some ways is the easy part. The hard part is to turn this long transcript of 600, 700 words into a summary, because it's not an exact science. It's not like, oh, if you do this, then you have the perfect summary. The summary that you need as a doctor may vary for the summary that a patient would like to see, may vary for the summary that the medical aid wants to see, or that authorities or not POPI, but some regulatory requirement wants to see for let's say that you are being sued for malpractice, you want to go back to your notes, what those notes are may be different, or the needs for that kind of requirement is different. So it remains true that the more perfect and complete your source document is, the better position you are in to produce all these different summaries. So I think you could see it as a two-phase problem. First, you optimize the transcription problem. Once you have that to a high standard, you can figure out how and what kind of summaries you should produce. And that's why modular systems, in my mind, are the way to go, because then you don't have to pick a single system that tries to do everything best, but you can say, well, last month this new tool came out and it's really good at transcription, but it's really bad at summarization. That's fine, because we can mix and match. So next steps for us would be still evaluate the other two, and maybe more if anyone has more ideas for tools that you think we should consider, bring them to us. Also, I'm going to show my email address, so if anyone wants to be part of this experiment and you want to be a volunteering doctor, we have a nice Dineplan voucher as a token of appreciation. So if you want a fancy dinner, then you should be part of this experiment. African languages is important, depending on where you are in the country and what patient demographic you treat. It's super important to also allow for Xhosa and Zulu and other languages. And of course, the performance will vary from discipline to discipline. We focused on primary care because that's where we think the most immediate application might be, at least in our world. But you might be a surgeon or you might be a psychiatrist, and I'm sure that the results would vary from discipline to discipline. As I said, we chose the easy way out by simulating consultations, but in the real world, you do have to worry about cybersecurity and patient confidentiality, and that means either you sign an enterprise agreement that has a zero data retention, so you do send the audio to an API, but the company, be it Google or be it OpenAI, promises to not keep your information and delete it after it has done the transcription. That is a leap of faith, and I think a lot of us don't necessarily want to take that leap of faith. So if you don't want to take that leap of faith, then you have to set up your own micro cloud where you can deploy this model in a safe space where you have control. So that's extra work. Or even more work would be to deploy this model with an open weight system like Llama 3. What's also, of course, is important is that you work on the seamless integration, because you still probably have an electronic health record system or an electronic medical record system, and it would be madness that some of the information is there and then some other information lives in a second place. So integration is extremely important. I also think that the scribes should be an accelerator for patient portals. I think it's frustrating and almost incomprehensible why it is that patients get so little information back after they have seen a doctor. It should be just like Read.ai drops my meeting report in my inbox, or Teams drops the meeting report in my inbox after the meeting is done. Similarly, if I'm a patient and I go to a doctor, by the time I'm home, there should be a summary already in my inbox for my personal use and recollection. And those scribes definitely allow that. And then lastly, why do we care? Well, we care because the promise, the value proposition is that scribes, first of all, help you remember what was said, and that should help deliver better healthcare, and that then in turn should produce better health outcomes. If that's not true, then it doesn't really matter whether we have full recollection or partial recollection of what was said. And that last part still needs to be evaluated, of course. Thank you. Oh, maybe one point. I see I have a few minutes, so I thought maybe some questions, but one thing I wanted to also share is a fallacy is that the full transcript is everything, and that's not true. So when you, as a doctor, see a patient, you have verbal communication, but you also have non-verbal communication. There are facial expressions. The way that the patient walks in can be telling. Their physical appearance, are they overweight? You're not necessarily going to verbalize, oh, I see you are overweight. And so the scribe won't know that, but you as a GP knows that, and you might, it might influence your clinical decision making. So the scribes hear everything in the best case. They don't see everything and they don't think. So that's important. Maybe in the future we'll have a little Big Brother type thing where it listens and sees everything, but even then I think there's always going to be contextual information that goes missing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wim. You talked about a future, maybe there would be a device that can actually see and hear and is already in your ears, wearing it. Meta's new AI, cameras, always on AI assistant, an ideal situation in that kind of setting. But Wim, thank you so much. Any questions before Wim leaves the stage? I asked ChatGPT what a sandbox experiment